There we go. Okay, so we are covering Chapter 7, Section 5, the second half of the section today, which again is going to be a relatively simple lesson. It revolves entirely around the rule that is currently up on the screen. Okay, so today we're talking about the single triangle proportion rule specifically for angle bisectors. It only applies to angle bisectors. None of the other parts of the triangle have this property. Only angle bisectors. An angle bisector in any triangle, no matter which one we look at, what it does is it separates the side opposite the angle that's being bisected. So in that case, that'd be side KL into two segments, KM and ML, that are proportional to the lengths of the two remaining sides, which would be your JK and your JL. What I'm saying is that if JM is an angle bisector, then the ratio of the two pieces, which would be KM to ML, KM to ML, is equal to the ratio of the two remaining sides, which would be JK and JL. Okay, now notice that I put the end point, the side that connects to that piece, on the same side of the fraction. So since JK is connected to KM, they both go on top. And since JL is connected to ML, it goes on the bottom. This proportion is true for every single angle bisector in every single triangle. Okay? Okay? This works for every single angle bisector in every single triangle. The proportion of the top piece to the bottom piece is equal to the top side to the bottom side. Okay? Notice that again. Your two pieces, KM and ML, the piece that shares K with side JK, they're both on the top. The piece that shares L with side JL, they're both on the bottom. So we're going to go through a couple examples of this, and hopefully by the time we've done a couple of examples, we'll see that there really are not very many, if any, tricks that can be thrown in here. Okay? There really are not any tricks. Everything is very straightforward, but we will look at every situation as far as possible trick questions could come up. Okay? So, here's an example. We're going to find the value of X in this particular triangle SQR. Now notice that the markings indicate that line segment RT is an angle bisector. Okay? It is bisecting angle QRS. Line segment RT is an angle bisector. Now there is one little added thing here. We have to think to ourselves, okay, we know that QT is X units, and we know that the entire length of SQ is 18 units. So in the chat, please type for me the length in terms of X of segment ST. How long is ST? The entire side length of the triangle is 18. The length of QT is X units. How long is ST? How long is ST? Okay, where'd the B come from? Everything except for the B I agree with. 18 minus x. Very good. Okay. If this distance is x from Q to T, and the entire length of this side is 18, then ST has to be 18 minus the x. Okay, ST is 18 minus x. Now, when we go to set up our proportion, we have two pieces. We have 18 minus x is one of the two pieces of side QS, and the other piece is x. So we set up a proportion. ST is to TQ. That is the ratio of the pieces, the bottom piece to the top piece, equals the ratio of the two remaining sides, SR and QR. Notice that ST shares a vertex with SR. They both have point S. That is why 14 goes on top. That is why SR goes on top of that fraction, because these two line segments share a vertex of this triangle. Same thing for QR. The reason why it goes on the bottom is it shares point Q with piece TQ. So this would be our bottom number. We plug these four numbers into this fraction, these four values in to this proportion. So we're going to plug these into the proportion. ST is 18 minus x. TQ is x. SR is 14. QR is 6. The setup here is about 95% of the difficulty. There's not usually anything difficult about solving the proportion itself. It's all about the setup. The setup is the hard part. Okay? So once we have our proportion, from there, all we need to do is cross multiply and solve for x. So we start by cross multiplying. 14 times x is 14x equals 6 times 18 minus x. Remember that I do not want you to try to distribute that. I want you to just write it out and then distribute it as you're solving. Okay? Yes. What can I do for you? You can unmute and ask, or you can type your question in the chat. Either or is fine. Okay, next step in the solving process then would be to distribute. So here we would distribute the 6. So we'd have 14x equals 6 times 18 is 108. 6 times negative x is negative 6x. Then we need to move the x to the left side of the equation by adding 6x to each side, which would give us 20x equals 108. And then divide by 20. Now notice that 108 is not divisible by 20. So our answer is either going to be a fraction or a decimal. There is no decimal in the problem, so I would definitely prefer a fraction. However, I would accept either answer. The fraction would be 27 over 5. The decimal would be 5.4. I would accept either answer as the correct answer here. So while we let everybody get that written down, are there any questions on this first example? If so, you can unmute and ask, or you can type them in the chat. Either or. Okay, so we're doing okay. Nobody has any questions for me before we advance to the second example? Okay, so here's the second example. This one I think is a little bit easier because we don't have to do as much to set it up. So what I want you to do is I'm going to give you about a 20-second head start on me. I want you to get out ahead of me. Okay, set up the proportion, solve for x. Okay, set up the proportion, solve for x. All right. So again, our proportion is going to be set up as the ratio of the two pieces. So our two pieces here are 4 feet and 6 feet. So our first fraction is going to be Vy over Yw. And that is going to be equal to the ratio of the two remaining sides, Vu and Uw. Vu shares an endpoint with Vy, so it goes on top. Uw shares an endpoint with Yw, so it goes on the bottom. Plug in your numbers. 4 is to 6 as x is to 13. And then we cross multiply and we solve for x. So what is the value of x in this problem? Type it in the chat, please. What is the value of x? Type it in the chat, please. Okay, so we've got some folks that are rounding off decimals. We never, ever, ever round off a decimal. So if you get a decimal that repeats, I would rather have a fraction for that very reason. So good work. Okay, we cross multiply. 6 times x is 6x. 4 times 13 is 52. So our equation is 6x equals 52. Then we divide by 6. 52 is not divisible by 6. However, it does reduce. Both 52 and 6 are divisible by 2. So that would be 26 over 3 or 8.6 repeating. Those are your two options for acceptable answers. Never, ever, ever round off a decimal unless the directions say that you can. Okay, I want exact answers, so don't round unless the directions tell you you're allowed to. Okay? Got one more example to go through. Any questions before we advance to the final example? All right then. Here is the third and final example. Okay, once again, we're going to have to consider what the length of AD is. So what is the length of AD in this picture? Very good. Same as the first example. If CD is X units and the entire length of AC is 20 units, then this piece AD would be 20 minus X units. Okay? We need to do that first because our proportion compares the two pieces, AD and CD, to the two remaining sides, AB and BC. So our proportion would be AD over CD equals AB over BC. Left piece over right piece equals left side over right side. Go in and plug in those side lengths as they are given. So AD is 20 minus X, CD is X, AB is 11, BC is 14. Then from there, it's just cross multiply and solve. So please finish this problem and tell me the value of X in the chat. Keep in mind that it is very rare that these problems ever work out evenly. We should generally expect a fraction or a nice decimal as our answers for these. Okay, they very rarely turn out to be even. Very often we get not nice answers here. Good. Get some good answers in the chat. Cross multiply. Then to solve that equation, we distribute. Then we would need to move the x's all to one side. So we'd have to add 14x to each side, which would give us 25x equals 280. And then we would divide by 25. That does not go in evenly. So we are going to have a fractional answer, a partial number answer. That would be 56 over 5, because both the top and bottom of that answer are divisible by 5. Or, what, 11.2? Good, 11.2. Now, keep in mind that there is another step that could be added on here. Basically, that step would be, and I'm going to have you do this in the chat, what is the length of segment AD? What is the length of AD? So this is like a bonus question. What is the length of AD? Good. Okay. Most of us, so we're getting good there. Yep. Okay. We got a little carrying issue, but we fixed it. Good. Okay. Yeah. I mean, all we got to do there is take the X from the problem, which is 11.2, plug it in here and do 20 minus that value, which would be 8.8, and then we'd need some units. Okay, so 8.8 units. That's another question that could be asked on the end of one of these problems. They could require you to plug X back in. So make sure you're reading directions and watching for those sort of things. Okay? All right, that does it for our notes today. So let me stop the recording.